What's up, guys, and welcome back to YouTube. Uh, this is going to be the first installment of BSing with New Dog, and this is a very serious subject, guys. I understand that there's a lot of differences in opinions when it comes to firearms in the United States of America, especially recently with the mass shooting here in my home state of Colorado in Boulder, the city of Boulder. So real quick, I want to address that before we get on to HR.127, the Sabika Chic Firearm Licensing and Registration Act. Um, in Boulder, I'm on Instagram and I've been active with the discussions in there regarding the mass shooting in Boulder. And there's a shit ton of false information being put out. Absolutely tons of false information being put out about the shooting, about Colorado state laws when it comes to firearms, about the laws in Boulder and Boulder County. People are listening to, and I hate to say this, but they're listening to left-wing media who are not telling their viewers the whole story. And people take what they hear and they assume that it's fact. They don't go and check themselves to see if what they hear is actually true or not. They just assume that, oh, CNN told me, therefore it's true. And it's not. So, first off, let's talk about the laws, and that's all we're gonna talk about with the mass shooting in Boulder County. All right, there's this thing going around, these talking points about Boulder County and the Boulder laws, and they're confusing what Boulder tried to do with Colorado state law. They're saying that AR-15s and high-capacity magazines were banned in Colorado, and that ban was overturned just days before the psycho went on his shooting rampage. That's entirely false. 100% completely false. All right? In the state of Colorado, you can go into any dealership, any FFL, get an AR platform, pay for it, pay the, I think it's $17 fee for a background check, fill out your background check. Once that comes back clean, you can take that firearm, buy the ammo, and go home. All in the same day. You can do that all in the same day. All right? High capacity magazines. We are not allowed to buy magazines that carry more than 15 rounds. All right? Now, if you had those magazines before that law was put into place, you're grandfathered in. However, you have to provide proof that you purchased those magazines beforehand, and that's only if a law enforcement officer or law enforcement agency decides to check you on it, which that doesn't happen unless you commit a crime. But so that's the law, all right? Now, from my understanding, and I could be wrong on this, you can go out of state, buy a 30-round magazine, and come back with it. As long as you don't sell that magazine that holds more than 15 rounds to anybody in the state of Colorado, you're okay, as far as I know. So, I hope that clears up the Colorado state law. Now, what happened was the city of Boulder made an attempt to ban what they call automatic, or I'm sorry, not automatic, but assault rifles. All right, assault weapons. And they also tried to make the magazine capacity stricter than what the state of Colorado had in place for a law. That law that they tried to pass went to court and it failed. It goes against the state constitution. It goes against the Constitution of the United States. It goes against so many different precedents that were already in place here in the state of Colorado that the court just said, yeah, no, you can't do that. And that happened, I think it was like 6 days before the shooter decided to shoot up a grocery store. the fact that it was overturned in court would not have prevented this guy from shooting. It would not have prevented him from doing what he wanted to do. All he had to do was leave Boulder County, and that's not a very long drive at all from Boulder itself. All he had to do was leave Boulder County. He could have picked up an AR platform, picked up all the ammunition he wanted, picked up all the magazines he wanted, gone back to Boulder County, and still committed this heinous act. So no, Colorado, the state of Colorado did not overturn that. And I just want to make that really clear, guys. Whether you're for firearms or against firearms, it doesn't matter. Know the facts. If you're going to make an argument, know what you're arguing and be able to back it up with fact. The state of Colorado allows you to purchase AR-style firearms and up to 15-round magazines. There's no ban. It was not overturned. You can still do that today just as you could 10 years ago. All right? Nothing's changed with the state of Colorado. It was just the city of Boulder who tried to make it harder, or not, I say harder. They tried to put more restrictions on that law, and it failed. The city of Boulder did that, not the state of Colorado. So, now that we got that out of the way, let's get to the topic at hand, HR.127, the Sabika Chic Firearm Licensing and Registration Act. If you don't want to listen to the commentary, if you don't want to listen to my opinions, if you don't want to listen to the actual facts that I'm going to talk about with this, go ahead, come up over here, and exit out right now. For those of you who are interested, for those of you who don't want to remain ignorant, for those of you just looking to increase your education on what Congress is trying to do, I welcome you. I'd love to hear your comments on this matter. Please, by all means, come right up here. This is the actual address. You can't see it all. But all you have to do is go to congress.gov. There'll be a search bar just like this. Type in HR.127, just like that. And you'll get a screen that looks like this. All you got to do is come down to these tabs here and click on text. And it'll give you the whole bill as it's written. All right? So that's what we're going to look at. So here, HR.127, it kind of just gives you an outline of what the bill is all about. The short title of this act may be cited as the Sabika Chic Firearm Licensing and Registration Act. Licensing of firearm and ammunition possession, registration of firearms. Let's go through this. So Section 2A, Firearm Licensing and Registration System. Paragraph 1, in general, Chapter 44 of Title 18 United States Code is amended by adding at the end the following: licensing of firearm and ammunition possession, registration of firearms. A, in general, the Attorney General, through the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or the ATF, shall establish a system for licensing the possession of firearms or ammunition in the United States and for the registration with the Bureau of each firearm present in the United States. Now, sorry, I got to keep clearing my throat here. This right here is impossible. It can't be done. It just can't. We have over 300 million legal firearms in the United States. We're not even talking about the illegal firearms. We're just talking about the legal ones. There's no way in hell that the AG, along with the ATF, will be able to come up with a registration for every single one of those firearms present in the United States. It just can't be done. It's an impossible task. This is a goal that cannot be reached. It just can't be. For one, you're going to have people who are going to be like, I'm not going to do that. And the government can't do anything about it. They can't. There's no way to enforce this. All right, establishing a system for licensing the possession of firearms or ammunition, that can be done. That's easy. It's not hard to come up with a system. What's impossible is executing that system. Moving on to Section B here, Firearm Registration System. Here's where they're talking about the system, all right? Number 1, required information. Under the Firearm Registration System, the owner of a firearm shall transmit to the Bureau. Already, this is not going to happen. I promise you, this is not going to happen. Some people will, but most firearm owners will not do this. A, the make, model, and serial number of the firearm, the identity of the owner of the firearm, the date the firearm was acquired by the owner, and where the firearm is or will be stored, and a notice specifying the identity of any person to whom and any period of time during which the firearm will be loaned to the person. Again, that's not going to happen. Most firearm owners are going to say, nah, we're not going to do that. And that's assuming this bill actually passes and becomes law. Paragraph B, deadline for supplying information. The transmission required by paragraph 1, this up here, shall be made, A, in the case of a firearm acquired before the effective date of this section, within 3 months after the effective date of this section, or in the case of a firearm acquired on or after the effective date, on the date the owner acquires the firearm. Now this part, that would be done through the FFLs. That would be done through the dealership. This, this part right here is a requirement on the civilians of the United States to basically work on the honor code, saying, yeah, okay, I have these guns already, so within 3 months, I'm going to give you all of this information up here. It's not going to happen, and there's no way to enforce it. Coming down to database. A, in general, the Attorney General shall establish and maintain a database of all firearms registered pursuant to this subsection. That, I feel bad for the AG and the AG's team, because that's years worth of work that will probably end up getting nixed with the next administration anyways. It's a waste of time. Paragraph 3, access. B, access. The AG shall make the contents of the database accessible to all members of the public. Keep that in mind. All federal, state, and law enforcement authorities, all branches of the United States Armed Forces. That's another one to keep in mind. And all state and local governments as defined by the Bureau. All right, so what this is saying, access to the database. Remember what's required in the database. All right, take a look at that. They're saying that every single person in the United States will have access to the make, model, and serial number of your firearm. They'll have access to your name, which will be your full name. It'll have access to the date that you acquired the firearm. And it will give them access to your address, where the firearm is or will be stored. Basically, paragraph 3, section B says, we're going to dox you. We're going to dox all firearm owners. We're going to put your information out there for anybody to access. And yeah, that's what we're going to do. And not only that, but all branches of the United States Armed Forces will have that information as well. What this is, this is basically, if you're a conspiracy theorist, or even if you're not, this should really be a red flag for you. Absolutely red flag right here. Why do the armed forces need to have all this information up here? What's the purpose? There's only one reason for the armed forces to have that information, and that's so the government can utilize the armed forces to come to your home and either take your guns away or force you by lethal force or by threat of lethal force to get that information from you. There's no other reason for this. Absolutely no reason for the United States Armed Forces to have the make, model, serial number, your identity, the date the firearm was acquired, and where the firearm is stored. There's no reason for the armed forces to have that information. None whatsoever. There's no reason for all members of the public to have that information. Let's move on. This right here, we're only 3 paragraphs in. All right. And this bill is already unconstitutional. Absolutely 100% unconstitutional. Moving on, licensing system requirements. General license. Except as otherwise provided in the subsection, the AG shall issue an individual a license to possess a firearm and ammunition if the individual has attained 21 years of age. I have an issue with that since they're trying to lower the age of voting to 16. If you are responsible enough to vote at the age of 16, you're responsible enough to own a firearm. Plain and simple. 21 years of age, this is standard for handguns throughout the United States. But what's interesting is for a long rifle, the standard is 18, which I don't understand that law. It makes no sense. It's completely arbitrary. But anyways, we're moving on. You have to be at least 21 years of age to get a license. You have to apply for a license. What this means is that you're going to pay a fee. Anytime you have to apply for something for the government here in the United States, that means you're paying money. After applying for the license, undergoes a criminal background check conducted by the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, or NICS, or NICS, depending on what you want to call it. Established under Section 103 of the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act, and the check does not indicate that possession of a firearm by the individual would violate subsection G or N of Section 922 or state law. All that's saying is that to get a firearm, you have to go through a background check, or to get a license, you have to go through a background check, which is required to get a firearm in the United States anyways, legally. There are some exceptions, like the state of Georgia, private sales, non-licensed, non-FFL licensed people can do a private sale to an individual, and that individual doesn't have to go through the background check, which is, I'm fully for changing that to where everyone has to go through a background check to obtain a firearm. But to get a license to obtain a firearm, no. Not unless this is going to trump getting a firearm in the future. In other words, you only go through one background check. So what I'm saying is, if you go through this, you get your license, you no longer have to do another background check in order to buy a firearm. I would be okay with that. Not cool with the whole licensing portion, because that's just another way of saying, we don't want to give you a license, and that means you can't have a gun. There's nothing in this that says that that's being checked, right? It's giving the government way too much power. Again, for licensing, you have to undergo a psychological evaluation conducted in accordance with paragraph 2, and the evaluation does not indicate that the individual is psychologically insuated to possess a firearm. A couple issues with this. One, that goes against HIPAA rules. It's a complete violation of our rules regarding health and mental health. That's a big one. I like the idea, but it goes against our laws already in place. So this bill already, it can't be passed because this does not go along with the HIPAA laws that we have in the United States. Secondly, I know where this comes from. This comes from a lot of people saying that, oh, these mass shooters, they're all mentally unstable. They all have mental health issues. That's actually not true. If you go to the FBI website, you can search it up, and you'll find that they've done studies of all these mass shooters, and only roughly 20% of them had mental instability issues. That's huge, guys. That basically says that mass shooters are not mental in the head. They're not crazy. What happens, according to the studies that the FBI conducted, their findings is that the individuals who go out and commit mass shootings, they already have a violent past. So like they've already committed domestic violence. They've already done robberies and other crimes and stuff like that. And one of the other underlying factors was that they're going through a huge amount of stress. I'm not making excuses, guys. I'm just telling you what the report says. And so having this violent past and being weighed down with stress, I don't want to say that they snap, because they don't. They don't snap. They carefully plan what they do. Um, but what happens is all that just is a burden on their shoulders, and they go and take that out on innocent people. And that's what the FBI has found, is that most mass shooters are very, very intelligent. They're fully within their right mind, knowing exactly what they're doing and how they're doing it, and it's all carefully planned. So yeah, this won't fix anything, and it's against our current laws. After applying for the license, successfully completes a training course, I'm all for requiring people to get trained. Certified by the Attorney General, I'm a little worried about that, because the AG is not an expert on what a good training course is. In the use, safety, and storage of firearms, that includes at least 24 hours of training, and demonstrates that 24 hours of training, that's not much. I'll be honest with you guys, 24 hours ain't shit when it comes to firearms. In the use, that's a rough phrase right there, because basically they're saying completes a training course in the use of firearms, which makes you a better shooter. Firearm safety, everybody who owns a firearm should at least know the safety rules for a firearm. And storage of firearms, and that's going to depend on state laws. 24 hours of training, that's weak, man. I'm not going to lie. For me to carry my firearm on the job, we go through a whole week of training. And that includes all of this stuff. And it also includes the laws, when we can and can't use our firearms, all that good stuff. So within 24 hours of training, and demonstrates that on issuance of the license, the individual will have in effect an insurance policy issued under subsection D. What that's doing is that's forcing people to get insurance because they own a firearm. Again, it's just a way for the government to force people to pay money, and that's bullshit. Complete and absolute bullshit. Insurance is a just-in-case thing. It should not be a law anywhere, not even car insurance, in my opinion. It should not be a law. Again, that's just my opinion. When it comes to things like firearms, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Antique firearm display license. The Attorney General shall issue to an individual a license to display an antique firearm in his residence of the individual if the individual is the holder of a license issued under subparagraph A, supplies proof that the individual owns the antique firearm, describes the manner in which the firearm will be displayed in accordance with regulations prescribed by the AG, and certifies that the firearm will be so displayed, and demonstrates that the individual has provided for storage of the firearm in a safe or facility approved by the AG for the storage of firearms. Now that doesn't make any damn sense, now does it? Think about that. Antique firearm display. Right there, black and white. Yet the very last subsection of this says you have to provide, right here, provide for storage of the firearm in a safe or facility approved by the AG. So you're not really displaying it if it's in a safe, now are you? This whole subsection should be deleted. Absolutely. This whole subsection serves no purpose, and it actually contradicts itself. Again, display. Firearm display, you have to provide storage for the firearm in a safe or facility approved. You can't display it if it's in a safe. Paragraph C, military style weapon license. Here's where we're going to get really dirty, man. Military style weapon. I'm curious because it doesn't look like they actually define military style. I got news for you guys. Every weapon is military style. Every single firearm out there is military style. All of them. The AG shall issue to an individual a license to own and possess a military-style weapon if the individual is the holder of a license issued under subparagraph A and, after applying for a license under the subparagraph, successfully completes a training course certified by the AG in the use, safety, and storage of the weapon that includes at least 24 hours of training and live fire training, because live fire training only makes you a better shooter. That's really going to help. If you want to cut down on gun violence, you don't want to have people who know how to shoot with the guns. You don't want to train potential criminals how to kill better and more effectively. But whatever. Hey, I'm not in Congress. These people are. They wrote this crap. But what's interesting here, guys, is I want you to note that there is no definition of military-style weapon at all. None. They can't even define what a military-style weapon is, yet they want to issue a license for it. How are you going to issue a license for something you don't know what it is? That makes no sense. And I say that because in all the other bills, they actually list out what makes something a certain thing. We can talk about, maybe in the next video, we'll go to the assault weapons ban of 2000 or what was it? 1918, I think. Not 1918, Jesus. 2018. Sorry, guys. The assault weapons ban of 2018, they actually define what makes an assault weapon. And there's no definition here of what a military-style weapon is. Maybe it's further down. I don't know. I haven't gotten that far. But either way, how are you going to issue a license for something that you can't define? Psychological evaluation. A psychological evaluation is conducted in accordance with this paragraph if the evaluation is conducted in compliance with such standards as shall be established by the AG. The evaluation is conducted by a licensed psychologist approved by the AG as deemed necessary by the licensed psychologist involved. The evaluation included a psychological evaluation of other members of the household in which the individual resides. And as part of the psychological evaluation, the licensed psychologist interviewed any spouse of the individual, any former spouse of the individual, and at least two other persons who are a member of the family, or an associate of the individual to further determine the state of the mental, emotional, and rational stability of the individual in relation to firearms. So this should really worry you. Holy crap. So basically we're just saying we're going to throw HIPAA laws out the rule. There's no such thing as doctor-patient confidentiality anymore. Absolutely none. We're going to give the government everything that we find out about you on a psychological level. We're going to tell the government all this stuff. You no longer have privacy between yourself and the doctor. So let's say you go to a psychologist because you're just having a hell of a month, a hell of a year, hell of a day, week, whatever, and you just happen to have the thought life would be better if I wasn't here. You had that thought in your mind. You go, crap, I need to go see a psychologist. So you go to the shrink and you talk about that. That shrink is going to red flag you because you have indicated that you might commit suicide. So you're not going to be able to get a firearm because you might commit suicide. That's not something that a psychiatrist legally can do. They cannot go to the government and say, yeah, he said that, life might be better without him. So I think he's contemplating suicide. He may commit suicide. Therefore, he shouldn't have firearms. But there's no proof that you actually are seriously considering it. That's why we have helplines like the Suicide Prevention Helpline. You call these people and they help you basically say, you know what, you're right, I need to continue living. That's the whole purpose behind the suicide prevention hotline. Section D. This is really troubling. So basically, not only do you have to go under a psych evaluation, but your spouse has to go under a psych evaluation. Your ex-spouse has to go under a psychological evaluation. And at least 2 other persons who are members of your family or are an associate of. So your child might be exposed to a psychological evaluation because you want to get a firearm. Your auntie, your uncle, your grandma, your grandpa, all these people might have to go under a psychological evaluation whether they want to or not, just because you decide you want to get a firearm. All right. This also includes people you work with, an associate of. This could be a friend. This could be a coworker. So if you don't have any family members, they're going to go to the people you work with to see to go under a psychological evaluation and determine if you are okay. So you have an ex-spouse. Where was it? Any former spouse. Let's say you or him, had a really bad divorce. Really bad. She or he hates your guts. They would run you over with a Mack truck if they could. The government's going to go and interview this person to see if you should be able to own a firearm. What do you think that person's going to say to the psychiatrist and to the government? They're going to say, no, that dude's crazy. He'll kill somebody, or she'll kill somebody. They absolutely should not have a gun. Whether you should or shouldn't, that's what they're going to say, because they have such hostility towards you that they're going to try to screw you over any chance they get. This is horrible. Absolutely horrible. Section D should not exist. The whole section, the psychological evaluation, this whole thing needs to go away. It serves no purpose. As stats prove, it serves no purpose. None. Denial of a license. Oh, this will be good. Required. The AG shall deny such a license if the individual is prohibited by federal law from possessing a firearm. Basically, you fail your background check. Assuming the background check's even been updated. That's how the shooter in Boulder got his firearms. The background check wasn't updated by government employees. Let that sink in, guys. The government failed to red flag the shooter in Boulder, and because the government failed to red flag the shooter in Boulder, that shooter was able to get his firearms. It has nothing to do with we the citizens. The government failed. All right? The Attorney General shall deny such a license to the individual if the individual is prohibited by federal law from possessing a firearm, or the individual has been hospitalized with a mental illness. So, again, say you have PTSD because you served in Iraq or Afghanistan, and you went to the hospital to get psychological help. You're now disqualified. Under these rules, you are now disqualified. Hospitalized with a mental disturbance, or hospitalized with a mental diagnosis, including depression, homicidal ideation, suicidal ideation, attempted suicide, or addiction to a controlled substance with the meaning of the Controlled Substances Act, or alcohol, or a brain disease, including dementia or Alzheimer's. Wow. So basically, if you have any kind of issue whatsoever, if you are taking medication for you're getting I forgot what it's called. Whatever. There's a lot of medications that are controlled. Say you become even temporarily addicted to medications, and you have to go to the hospital because of that temporary addiction, you are now disqualified. You can't get a firearm. If you are a recovering alcoholic, you can't get a firearm if you've been hospitalized for alcohol. So you get alcohol. You go out, you party. You don't even have to be an alcoholic. You go out, party, and you party a little too hard. You end up drinking way too much booze, and you get hospitalized for alcohol poisoning. You can no longer get a firearm. Your license is going to be denied. That's not very fair. You had a one-time incident where you got hospitalized because you just partied it up a little too much, and now you can't get a firearm. Brain disease, including dementia or Alzheimer's, I actually agree with that. There's many reasons to agree with that. There's some reasons to disagree with that as well, but I'm going to let you guys make up your own mind on that part. Make up your own mind about all of this, by the way, but this one especially. You've been hospitalized on account of conduct that endangers self or others. That's a really, really broad statement. That's like a catch-all. So, I mean, I could say, well, I got hospitalized because I broke my leg skiing. Well, that endangers myself. So, because I broke my leg skiing, even though I'm a law-abiding citizen, I got nothing on my background check. I got a clean background check. I have no addiction to any substances or nothing like that. Perfectly fine in the head. Because I got a broken leg from skiing, that broken leg endangers myself or others. I can no longer get a firearm. So basically, they're saying that if you've ever been to a hospital, you won't get a firearm, which is messed up. And they say that they're not trying to take your guns. They absolutely are. Moving on, denial of license. Authorized. The AG may deny such a license to an individual if the psychological evaluation referred to in paragraph 2 indicates the individual has a chronic mental illness or disturbance or a brain disease referred to in subparagraph A2.1 is addicted to a controlled substance with the meaning of a Controlled Substance Act or alcohol, or 3 has attempted to commit suicide, or prior psychological treatment or evaluation of the individual indicates that the individual engaged in conduct that posed a danger to self or others. Basically, these are all just summaries of this. 4. Suspension of a license. In general, a license issued under this subsection to an individual who is under indictment for a crime punishable by imprisonment for a term exceeding 1 year is hereby suspended. That makes sense. If you go to prison for a year for pretty much any crime, you already can't legally get a firearm. Again, unless the government screws up and fails to red flag you in the NICS system. In which case, you can get a firearm, but you're kind of rolling the dice at that point. Suspension, paragraph B, authorized for lack of firearm insurance. Basically, they're saying, well, we'll just read it. The AG may suspend a license issued under this subsection to an individual who has violated section 922DD in the most recent 12-month period. So basically, if you don't keep your insurance up, they can take your license away, they can take your guns away. Again, you're forcing people to pay for something that they don't necessarily need or want. That's illegal and should never, ever happen. Revocation of license. A license issued under this subsection to an individual who is or becomes prohibited by federal or state law from possessing a firearm is hereby revoked. Such an individual shall immediately return the license and surrender all firearms and ammunition owned or possessed by the individual to the AG. This cannot be enforced unless, again, they literally, the moment you become prohibited by federal state law from possessing a firearm, they would literally have to escort you to your home, find all your firearms, and take them away from you. That's not going to happen. That's illegal under the Constitution. They can't do that. Expiration of license. A license issued to an individual under the subsection shall expire, A, in the case of a license that has been in effect for less than 5 years, 1 year after issuance or renewal, as the case may be. What? A license issued to an individual under this subsection shall expire in the case of a license that has been in effect for less than 5 years. So it's a 5-year license, 1 year after issuance or renewal, as the case may be. So I'm assuming this is a 5-year license and it expires 1 year after issuance or renewal? That doesn't make any sense. Or B, in the case of a license that has been in effect for at least five years, 3 years after the most recent date the license is renewed. So it sounds like they want you to renew the license every year, which means more money because you're going to have to do the training all over again, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with people going under annual training for firearms. I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with requiring the training for a license, though. Renewal of license. Here we go. The AG shall review or renew a license issued to an individual under the subsection if the individual A requests renewal by the end of the 60-day period that begins with the date the license expires. Very similar to like our driver's licenses and stuff like that. Shall renew. Okay. So to get renewed, you have to request renewal by the end of your grace period that your license expired. This is a 60-day grace period. Or 2 months, basically. Kind of like temporary plates here in the United States. When you get a new car, you get temporary plates. You get 60 days to get permanent plates. Otherwise, you are in violation of the law, and you'll get fined. In the 3-year period ending with the date the renewal is requested, you've met the requirements of all the stuff we already talked about. Has successfully completed a training course. Like I said, you're paying money now. So the renewal only requires at least 8 hours of training. So that could be 8 hours of classroom. That doesn't even include 8 hours of range time, or it doesn't even include an hour of range time. It could all literally be classroom time, 1 day, and that meets the requirements for renewal. I'd be okay with this if we had the same requirement for drivers. If you had to go through a driving safety course every time you had to renew your driver's license, I'd be okay with this, but you don't, so I'm saying this is BS. It should not happen. Meets the requirements of paragraph 1A3, which is up there. We already talked about that. D, in the case of a license issued under paragraph 1C in the 2-year period ending with the date the renewal is requested, has successfully completed a training course, blah, blah, blah. 8 hours of training in the use of the weapon subject to the license. So now they're getting, this is interesting, because now, they haven't said that prior to this, but now they're saying you need training in the use of the weapon subject to the license. This is a very poorly written bill, because now we're, 2/3 of the way through the bill? Now they're saying that the license will only be issued to you in the weapon that you're licensed to carry, or in the weapon that you're licensed to own. So they're saying right here, this phrase right here is saying that if you want to own a Glock, you have to have a license for that Glock. If you want to own a Smith & Wesson of the same caliber and design as that Glock, you have to have a second license for the use for that Smith & Wesson, even though they're essentially the same firearm. You have to own a weapon. You have to own a license for every single individual rifle that you own. You have to have a license for every single individual shotgun that you own. They're basically saying you have to have an individual license for every single individual firearm that you own, according to this right here, this highlighted bit. Why wasn't that anywhere up in here? Under licensing. Why wasn't that put under licensing? Where was that? Right here. Why wasn't that defined in this section? That you need a license for every single individual firearm that you own. That should really, really be a red flag. right here, this right here, and the lack of it anywhere else so far says that this bill should not be passed. Legally, it cannot be passed because it's so general. And they're introducing new things to things that have already been introduced. That's not how you write a bill. Firearm insurance in general, the AG shall issue to any person who has applied for a license pursuant to subsection C and has paid to the Attorney General the fee specified in paragraph 2. Oh, look at that, which is an $800 fee, by the way, for every single firearm that you own. Of this subsection of policy that insures the person against liability for loss and damages resulting from the use of firearm by the person during the 1-year period that begins with the date the policy is issued. So it's only a 1-year insurance policy that you have to renew every single year. And the fee that you have to pay for your license for every single firearm is $800. So if you own 2 firearms, you have to pay $1,600 for a license to carry both those firearms, for the licenses to carry both those firearms. They're really, really trying to keep guns out of the average day person's hand, or the average person's hands. Not too many people can afford $800 every year for one firearm. Military, oh, here we go. Now they're going to define military style weapon. This ought to be great. The term military style weapon means any of the firearms or copies or duplicates of the firearms in any caliber known as Norinco, Mitchell, and Polytechnologies, Avamat, Kalashnikovs. Basically, any Russian firearm. So AK-47s, even if they're semi-automatic, even if they're bolt action, they just look like an AK-47. That's considered a military-style weapon. It could be bolt action, guys. It just has to look, according to this, copies or duplicates of the firearm in any caliber. You can have a .22 AR-15 that is bolt action. It would just look like an AR-15, but it's bolt action. And it's telling you now you can't do that. Action Arms, Israel, Military Industries, Uzi, and Galil. Again, these are semi-automatics, not military style at all. This is an issue. Congress is trying to change the definition of what certain firearms are. Beretta AR-70, Colt AR-15, which is funny because AR stands for Armalite. Colt bought Armalite and gained the, when they bought Armalite, the company, they gained the rights to the name AR. Fabrique National, FN, FAL, FN LAR, and FNC, SWD, M10, M11, M1119, and M12, Steiger AUG, Interact, Tech 22, revolving cylinder shotguns such as are similar to the Street Sweeper and Striker 12. So right here, they're pretty much getting rid of most semi-automatics, just in Section A here. Again, like I said, they're changing the definition of what a military-style weapon is. And they're doing this to scare the public. Plain and simple, that's the only reason behind it. Military-styled weapons. Having served in the military, all right, I can tell you right now that these are military style. If they are as is, if they're sold as is, because AKs, unless they've been modified, are automatics. However, here in the United States, we have AKs that have been modified to be semi-automatic and bolt action. Uzi and Galil, again, these are semi-automatics. They're not military-styled. Military-styled weapons fire or can fire in three burst mode or in automatic. One of those two things, or both, have to be present in order for it to be a true military-style weapon. They're trying to change up the definition. The Beretta AR-70, which is, again, it's not an automatic, it's a semi-automatic, therefore it is not a military-style weapon. The Colt AR-15, not a military-style weapon, it's semi-automatic. Don't know anything about that, don't know anything about these, don't know anything about that. Don't know anything about Tech 9s and all that good stuff. Revolving cylinder shotguns, those are also semi-automatics. Therefore, they are not military-style. The military doesn't even use these. Military uses pump-action shotguns. However, that might have changed. I know when I was in, I got out in 2012, all right? But when I got out, we were still using pump-action shotguns. So I'm just throwing that out there. Just throwing it out there. B, a semi-automatic rifle that has the ability to accept a detachable magazine and has at least 2 of the following. All right, so all semi-automatic rifles have a detachable magazine, can accept a detachable magazine, all of them. But we need 2 more, all right? A folding or telescoping stock, a pistol grip that protrudes conspicuously beneath the action of the weapon. Interesting that they put conspicuously. All pistol grips are a part of the lower receiver. They're not placed conspicuously. Or no, they are placed conspicuously. Sorry. Never mind. Skip that. A bayonet mount, which you can have. All you have to do, they make bayonet mounts for every semi-automatic rifle. They're either attached via the M-lock or the Picatinny rail system. A flash suppressor or threaded barrel designed to accommodate a flash suppressor, or a grenade launcher. I've never seen anybody use a grenade launcher in the civilian world for any purpose outside of being at a range where it's like a special deal where the range provides the 203 attachments. So, yeah, you're not going to find a firearm with an attached 203. You're just not. A flash suppressor. So basically, the thing at the end of your barrel, that's a flash suppressor. It is. Or designed to accommodate a flash suppressor. This is pretty much standard on all firearms, on all rifles anyway. Pistol grip is pretty much standard on all firearms, or on all semi-automatic rifles. Folding or telescoping stock, not standard, but most are. So basically this is saying right here, pistol grip and a flash suppressor. Why can't I say that word? A flash suppressor. That's nothing more than what's at the end of the barrel. On pretty much every single semi-automatic rifle out there. And all that does, all a flash suppressor does, is redirect the flow of gases so your muzzle doesn't go flying all over the place. It helps you stay on target. That's all this does. So basically with these two, they're saying all semi-automatic rifles, for the most part, almost all semi-automatic rifles would be considered military style, which is completely false because military style rifles, not all of them have a folding or telescoping stock. The only one that I know of, 100% sure of, is the M4, which looks like an AR-15 or an AR platform. Pistol grip, pretty much all military weapons have a pistol grip. Not all of them, but most of them. Bayonet mount, like I said, you can easily put that on any firearm. You can even put a bayonet on on a pistol, for crying out loud. Flash suppressor is on every single military weapon, but it doesn't do anything other than help you stay on target. Grenade launcher, most military firearms don't have a grenade launcher. Only your Grenadier will have the 203 attachment. So, yeah. Like I said, they're basically trying to ban all semi-automatic rifles because, according to this, almost all of them are military styled. Military style semi-automatic pistol that has the ability to accept a detachable magazine and has at least two of the following. So all semi-automatic pistols do have can accept a detachable magazine. An ammunition magazine that attaches to the pistol outside of the pistol grip. Very rare, and no pistol in the military has that I know of. At least not in the U.S. military. So that's not really a definition of a military-styled weapon. A threaded barrel capable of accepting a barrel extender, flash suppressor, forward hand grip, or silencer. None of the military weapons outside of stuff like the special forces have any of this. So that's not a military-style weapon either. A shroud that is attached to or partially or completely encircles the barrel and that permits the shooter to hold the firearm with the non-trigger hand without being burned. A barrel shroud, right there, this is on every single semi-automatic rifle or semi-automatic pistol. This is already a check mark, but boom. You've already gotten one of the two requirements for it to be defined by Congress as a military-style semi-automatic pistol. A manufactured weight of 50 ounces or more when the pistol is unloaded. A semi-automatic version of an automatic firearm. So there you go. Right there. There's your two requirements to make all semi-automatic pistols military-styled and thus illegal by Congress. Number 3, a barrel shroud, which is attached to every single semi-automatic pistol in the market, and a semi-automatic version of an automatic firearm. They're all, with the exception of like the SF-92, they're all versions of the automatic firearm. So yeah, basically all of your semi-automatic pistols are now going to be outlawed because of number 3 and number 5 here, just as up here in semi-automatic rifle. D, a semi-automatic shotgun that has at least two of the following. A folding or telescoping stock. Not many of them have that. None of them in the military do. So that's not really a definition or a defining part to make it a military weapon. A pistol grip that protrudes conspicuously beneath the action of the weapon. Again, most, I don't recall ever seeing a semi-automatic shotgun in the military, let alone one that has a pistol grip. So again, that's not really a defining point for saying it's a military-styled weapon. A fixed magazine capacity that exceeds 5 rounds. That, again, military doesn't even have that, so that's not a valid point to call it a military-styled weapon when the military doesn't even have that. An ability to accept a detachable magazine, well, that would make it a semi-automatic shotgun if it can accept a detachable magazine, so that's an automatic check mark right there. All you have to do is basically have any one of these 3 and it's now outlawed. So they're basically trying to take all semi-automatic firearms from us according to these definitions right here. Clerical Amendment, the table of sections for such chapter is amended by adding at the end the following. Deadline for establishment: with 1 year after the date of the enactment of this act, the AG shall prescribe final regulations to implement the amendments made by the subsection. Prohibitions, penalties. Prohibition, section 922 of such title is amended by adding at the end of the following. It shall be unlawful for a person to possess a firearm or ammunition unless the person is carrying a valid license. In the case the firearm is owned by the person, the firearm is registered to that person. In the case the firearm is owned by another person, the firearm is so registered to that other person. and that such other person has notified the AG that the firearm has been loaned to the person. Okay, so that was all covered. They're just kind of rehashing it out right here. Shall be unlawful for a person to transfer a firearm or ammunition to a person who is not licensed. It shall be unlawful for a person to sell or give a firearm or ammunition to another person unless the person has notified the AG of the sale or gift. So basically, you have to be licensed to even receive any of that, the ammunition or the firearm. It shall be unlawful for a person to loan a firearm or ammunition to another person unless the person has notified the AG of the loan, including the identity of the person and the period for which the loan is made. That's already covered. It shall be unlawful for a person holding a valid license issued under that to transfer a firearm to an individual who has not attained 18 years of age, which is really weird because they said you have to be 21 to get a license. So which is it? Can you have the firearm or have the license at the age of 18, or do you have to be 21? Again, this bill has contradicted itself. It says quite plainly in black and white, we covered up, is one of the first things we covered under licensing, that you have to be at least 21 years of age to have a license, and you have to have a license to take ownership for, you have to take ownership of the license. So this is basically saying that if you're not 18 years old, at least 18 years old, you can't have a firearm, but then it says at the very beginning that you can't have a firearm unless you're 21. So which is it? 18 or 21? Pick one. A person who possesses a firearm or to whom a license is issued shall have an effect in insurance policy under the section, blah, blah, blah. We've already covered that. Whoever knowingly violates this section shall be fined not less than $75,000. So if somebody says, yeah, I got a license, I show you a license, it may be counterfeited, you get caught, now you're paying at least $75,000 for that, no more than $150,000. And you're also doing 15 years. And or you're doing at least 15 years in the state pen. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that'll get challenged in court. Whoever knowingly violates shall be fined not less than $50,000 and not more than $75,000, in prison not less than 10 years, not more than 15 years, or both. Subsection BB1. Whoever knowingly violates BB2 shall be fined not less than $30,000, not more than $50,000, in prison 5 years, not more than 10 years, or both. If you violate BB3, you shall be fined not less than $5,000. Whoever knowingly violates BB4 shall be fined not less than $75,000 and or imprisoned for not less than 15 years. Except if the transferee of the firearm possesses or uses a firearm during in or relation to a crime, in which case you will be fined the minimum of $100,000 and imprisoned to 25 years. Do we really need to go through all this? Whoever knowingly violates CC shall be fined not less than $50,000 and imprisoned not less than 10 years. Conforming amendments, we could check out all this stuff later on. Basically, it's CC, BB4, BB3, BB2, all that we've already covered. Conforming amendments, elimination of prohibition on establishment of a centralized firearm registration system. Section 926A of title is amended by striking the second sentence. Applicability to governmental and or military firearms and ammunition. Such title is amended in each paragraph by inserting and except for section 923. Yeah, okay. Amendments made. Okay. Prohibition on possession of certain ammunition. Okay, so now we're talking about ammunition. It shall be unlawful for any person to possess ammunition that is 50 caliber or greater. So no more 50 cal firearms for you. It shall be unlawful for any person to possess a large capacity ammunition feeding device, such as what is considered large capacity. We have to define that before we can say you're not allowed to have it. We'll see if they define it later on. The manufacture for or possession by the United States or Department agency, United States, possession law enforcement officer employed by such an, okay, so it's basically saying if you're a law enforcement officer, this doesn't apply to you. The possession by an employee or contractor of a license under Title I Atomic Energy Act. So yeah, okay, that doesn't really apply to most people. The manufacturer possession of a license, manufacturer license importer for the purpose of testing experimentation authorized by the Attorney General. Basically, if you're working for the government, the manufacturer or possession by an organization that provides firearm training and that is registered with the AG or the possession of an individual to whom an organization is providing firearm training during and at the location of training. So that would be like me, an armed security guard. Large capacity ammunition, here we go, defined. The term large capacity ammunition feeding device means a magazine, belt, drum, feed strip, or similar device that has a capacity of, or that can be readily restored or converted to accept more than 10 rounds of ammunition. That basically says every single magazine ever made, because every single magazine ever made will either hold more than 15 rounds or more than 10 rounds. What happens, and I covered this before. I'm not going to go in how you can do it, all right? But it is literally a 5-step process to turn a 10-round magazine that was originally supposed to hold 15, 30, whatever. It's a 5 steps to do that, to convert it from 10 round to the original capacity. So basically they're saying all magazines, all manufacturers of magazines have to only make 10 round magazines. All other magazines, according to this, will be against the law. So there's no grandfathering of magazines, none at all. If you are in possession of a 15-round magazine, a 30-round magazine, 100-round magazine, 50-round magazine, and so on and so forth, you will be fined no less than $50,000, and you will be going to prison for at least 10 years. Yeah. So basically, this is just saying, like I've said before, every single magazine on the market today, as it stands right now, will be banned because all of them can be modified to hold more than 10 rounds. And it requires all manufacturers to only produce 10-round or less magazines. Yeah, the producers of these magazines will basically they'll fight this hard. This bill's not going to get passed. If it does become law, it's immediately going to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court won't uphold this bill. They won't. They'll shoot it down. Does not include an attached tubular device designed to accept and capable of operating only with 22 caliber rimfire ammunition. That makes no sense. And I'll tell you why it makes no sense. Why are 22 caliber rimfires the only exception? A 223 or a 556, they're the same round, 223, 556, same round, is loaded into AR-15s or AR platforms. That round is no bigger than a 22. It's no bigger than a 22, guys. It might have a little bit more length, but circumference-wise, it's not noticeably different. Not at all. It might be a little, well, it is a little bit bigger, a fraction bigger than a 22 in terms of circumference. But if you put the two together and you didn't know the difference, you would say they're the same thing. That's how small the difference is. So why are 22s the exception, but 556s and 556s, 223s are not? They're essentially the same round. The other difference between a 22 and a 556 223 is that the 556 223 will have more grains in it. It'll come out faster than a 22. 22s, you usually get, they're about 30, 40, I think 45 grain is about as big as you'll get for 22s. There are some exceptions for like the subsonic and supersonic rounds, but incidentally enough, those aren't covered in here. If you got a 22, you're good. With the exception of maybe those 5.56s, 223s will come out faster. They're usually around 85 to like 155 grain. Not much more faster than a 22, but they are faster. So that covers that. That covers this bill. This bill is just so. We've found what, 2 contradictions in the bill just reading through it. The age was a contradiction. What was the other one, guys? Put in the comments below. There was another contradiction. I just can't remember what it was. Very, very much illegal. It breaks the laws, breaks the HIPAA laws. It breaks, well, I shouldn't say it breaks, but it's non-enforceable. You can't enforce this bill. There's no way you can force this bill. Like I said, over 300 million firearms in the United States. There's no way, absolutely no way whatsoever, that you're going to get all of those firearms put into their little registration database. It's not going to happen. It will not happen under any circumstance. It cannot happen. There's just no way of knowing who has guns and who doesn't. So you can't enforce having all those guns registered because you don't know where all the guns are. Does that make sense? There's just no way of knowing where all the guns are, so you cannot possibly get a database of all the guns. Like I said, the government's trying to say that, well, it's going to be an honor code. There's no honor system in that. Most people, myself included, will not comply with that. I'll be like, hey, you want my serial number and all that shit? Well, come on over here and try to get it. All right, take that any way you want. Any way you want. All I'm going to say before I leave off is I'll get my 2. If you know what that means, give me a hoorah in the comments. If you don't know what it means, forget about it. But anyways, guys, I do hope that this was at least educational. If nothing else, at least it was educational. I do highly recommend that you guys go to congress.gov, look up HR.127, come down here to the text, read it for yourself, and save it. I mean, you can do that. I mean, you can get it in PDF. You can get it in text format, whatever. Save it. Refer to this every time somebody tries to tell you that the government's not trying to take guns away from us, because they absolutely are. And we've gone over that when they define military-style weapon, which they're trying to ban. They are literally trying to ban damn near every single modern-day firearm in existence to this very day. Nah, bro. Not playing that game. They will have another civil war if this gets passed. It's going to happen. There will be another civil war, and it's going to be ugly. Really, really ugly. I'm going to start ranting again, so I'm going to leave it here, guys. Let me know what you think about the video. Leave your comments below. What do you think about all this? And until next time, be safe, be cool, have fun. We'll catch you in the next one.